Welcome back from the break, the second break we've had. Cat has been fed, so luckily we've bought ourselves
Same.
a few hours.
Right.
We're at
At
the
least a
mercy
minute.
of our cats. Alright, so before the break, we were talking about different lightsaber colors. We were transitioning from the more obscure lightsaber colors and transitioning specifically, we were talking about Ahsoka Tano and her transition from the Clone Wars into Star Wars Rebels. Now, I know that you haven't seen Star Wars Rebels, but specifically, basically, since her first introduction in uh, Star Wars Rebels, that she has had white or silver lightsabers basically the entire time in the 20-year time skip between, maybe like 18 years between the fall of the Jedi Order, Order 66, which is the ending episode of Star Wars: The Clone Wars ends with Order 66, going on to her first introduction before the Battle of Yavin, or which is what, 2 to 3 years before the Battle of Yavin. She appears and she suddenly has white lightsabers that she did not have previously. Looking on and looking into the white lightsabers, they represent absolute purity. Now, there has been some, I don't know if speculation is the correct word, but I've seen that some iterations have that she took a Sith Inquisitor, so not a Sith Lord like Darth Vader, but a Sith Inquisitor's uh, crystals or synthetic crystals, and purified them holistically and made the absolute pure and one with the Force white lightsabers. I don't know if she took her own and, purified them. I guess that doesn't quite make sense when you think about like the quote unquote after credit scene in the Clone Wars where she buries her lightsabers and Darth Vader actually finds them later on, which I think is a very powerful moment. So I guess she finds some other crystal, she purifies them and makes her own lightsabers. But as far as I can tell, she's actually one of the only, or at least the most prominent, white lightsaber wielders, which I think is very powerful and impactful when you take into consideration Hosoka as a character.
You know, so I agree. I think that that Ahsoka, right, was established as like a fan favorite pretty early on in
Mm-hmm.
Clone Wars when she showed up. She's just kind of like an extra character that showed up, grew and developed, and actually ended up becoming like the main participant of, if not the center of, a lot of great storytelling for the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because like the adventure, the life she leads, ends up shaping a lot of what we extended lore fans were looking for, from a lore source like Clone Wars and from
Mm-hmm.
Rebels. And I remember, so like not having seen Rebels at all, I remember when Ahsoka Tano was announced to be um, showing up in the Mandalorian series.
Yes.
And I remember when, I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Gosh, is this just like a fan grab? Is this sort of like a, hey, this is a really cool thing? Is she just going to be anything or what? Um, when she shows up and you see her, spoilers, she has her silver lightsabers as well. Her like the white lightsaber, both of them. And they have a very distinct design. I remember seeing those two lightsabers and thinking about their design and thinking about how reminiscent they were of Dooku's. And that's like, I'm not the
Really?
only person that saw that, right? So like, if you want, and we don't have to do this now, but Ahsoka's lightsabers have this design that have this like curved hilt, and I think she's had that since Clone Wars too. Like she has like a small lightsaber, a shorter lightsaber, and a longer one that she uses. So she's got the smaller one in her offhand and the longer one in her
Mm-hmm.
primary hand. Um, I may be wrong, maybe misremembering, but there's this depiction of the lightsaber she has, and I remember the design. I remember looking at the design and thinking to myself, who else had lightsabers shaped like Dooku's? a particular student of Dooku's
Mm-hmm.
who happened to have crossed paths with a Miss Ahsoka Tano.
Yeah.
If memory serves, is may I ask for little spoilers? Do we hear anything about our Asajj Ventress
Asajj Ventress.
in Rebels?
So,
Because I've
this
got a head
this
canon.
disclaimer: I have not seen every episode of
Okay.
Star Wars Rebels. I have looked up because I did not really resonate with Rebels and their characters. I looked up like the episodes to watch, and so it cut out a lot of what some might concern or hold on, can't think of the word. What some people will identify as filler arcs, and so I cut down a lot of episodes. So I probably only watched maybe 30 episodes in the 4 seasons that was Star Wars Rebels. In that time, I had not seen Asajj Ventress. To my knowledge, she had disappeared after the first half of season. She wasn't even season 7. Where was she? Last I heard, she was a bounty hunter after she had been kind of disowned by Count Dooku, left for dead, and even though she was still force sensitive, she didn't wield lightsabers anymore.
Right. So
Um, yeah,
so that's why I ask. Um, I'm looking at Google. I'm looking at some promo
same.
art, right, of Ahsoka
Mm-hmm.
Tano. I'm looking at her from Rebels, and I'm looking at live action from Mandalorian, and I'm looking at some like the scale replica models that people have had from other parts in her life. Ahsoka Tano's got a pair of lightsabers, a pair of white lightsabers, in her promo art for her own show when the live action show becomes a thing, which I'm very excited for.
Mm-hmm.
That if you look at, have curved handles, right?
Yeah, I'm seeing the
Um,
same thing. In the animated
and
series, she had it was not curved, but in the
I'm
live
looking at a
action, it
I'm
started
looking
to
at
be
a
curved.
picture. I'm looking at, so there are two pictures. There's two different versions of adult Ahsoka Tano that I'm seeing. I don't know which of them are from Rebels and which of them aren't. One of them has curved lightsabers in it though. And that's the
Yeah.
so that's what I'm kind of looking at. I'm looking at one where she looks like much older, and she has uncurved lightsabers. And I don't know if that's a production decision, if that's like a design oversight, or if that's like deliberate. Um, and then there's one here where she's older, but she's not a teenager, right? A young adult, where she has curved lightsabers. I'm just, I look at that curved design, and I distinctly recall a Mr. Count Dooku who had a specific combat style
Yes.
that used curved lightsabers like that because of the leverage it would provide for one to be able to flick their wrist and do a thing rather than commit their arm as a whole to a movement. A fencing
Yes.
style, if you will. And obviously,
Exactly.
Ahsoka Tano's got her own little combat style. We're not going to talk about the combat style here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at this, and I have this 2 and 2, right? I see this. And I remember a Miss Asajj Ventress who also had
Mm-hmm.
a pair of lightsabers, and there's this standing canon that if you do some research, it talks about the silver lightsaber, the white lightsaber, being a fully restored red lightsaber. If somebody successfully heals it, not just as a symbol of purity, but one where it was corrupted, it was forced to bleed and then was healed. And I just think about the way that their relationship ended in Clone Wars, and I can't help but feel like somebody somewhere in production had an idea. And they thought to themselves, you know what? I bet nobody will notice this thing until we get the opportunity to drop it. And I have this headcanon in my head somewhere where, like, wouldn't it just be interesting if the white lightsaber, the silver lightsaber, was actually what this fan theory, or this not fan theory, sorry, this extended universe application of the theory of the conversion of a red lightsaber was was fully true. It wasn't just like I found a kyber crystal and it became this symbol of purity and oneness and like wholeness, but if it was actually just somebody healing, and she has Asajj Ventress's lightsabers, and reattuned them to make them not red. And I'm kind of into that.
God, I can't think. Hold on. As I'm looking through and I'm remembering, because I remember seeing Asajj Ventress's like descent out of like Count Dooku's apprenticeship into this bounty hunter slash like hitman for the Sisters of Dathomir, which are the Night Sisters who she originally
Yeah.
came from.
Yeah.
I can't think of what happened to her lightsabers. I can't,
Right?
and I don't remember, and that is
I'm just interesting,
that's very interesting because I remember in the latter half of season 7, which was the return of Ahsoka, because she disappeared after the end of 5. She wasn't in 6, but season 7 was basically all about her. And she ran into Asajj Ventress, and I can't. No, hold on. Asajj was a bounty hunter in 5, and I don't remember her lightsabers being in 5.
Right, like is that before or after she loses her lightsabers?
So she lost her
Because
lightsabers, she turned a bounty hunter. And so she never, as a bounty hunter, she never had her lightsabers. But that was that was in season 5, if I remember correctly, because she helped kind of track down who the traitor within the Jedi Order was, which was, of course, Ahsoka's dear friend. I'm not
right, I
sure.
forgot about that. That's actually a good point.
Yeah, I'm not.
The betrayal.
Yeah, like I don't want to give like too much because it's
Yeah.
such like a heavy impact moment. Like those are some of my favorite like why I grew to love Ahsoka as a character, because like seasons 1 through 4, okay, like she's one of like 5 or 6 like Darth Vader slash Anakin Skywalker disciples. Like there's a lot of you lost the significance in being the one,
Right.
the chosen one's disciple, apprentice.
Yeah.
You lose that impact. But her character development in 5 was really freaking interesting,
Right,
because
okay.
she didn't betray the Jedi Order, and she ultimately left it because she's like, you guys don't trust me. Like, how am I supposed to trust you and you didn't trust me?
Right.
So yeah, I don't know.
Well, there's also like a level of I think symbolism that the silver lightsaber can then hold as a transition to purity, to truth, right? An adherence to truth, like in the true neutral, the true lawful sense, like
Yeah.
in Dungeons and Dragons alignment. I happen to have access to the internet. I am a fully functioning member of society. Uh,
Yeah.
Asajj Ventress loses her 2 lightsabers to the betrayer friend, because the betrayer friend ambushes her and tries to take and like disguise herself as Asajj. And
Okay.
and I don't think Asajj ever gets her lightsabers back,
I don't think she does now.
right? So that means somewhere in season 5, betrayer friend has Asajj's lightsabers, and we just kind of quietly never see that happen. I'm just saying, maybe do we know what happens to betrayer friend? Do we know what happens? Because I'm looking at these images.
Not fully. Like, we know that like they are put on trial instead of Ahsoka,
Right?
but you don't know the end of that.
So my headcanon, because as it is in the most the most progressed timeline, being the Mandalorian that we've seen
Yes.
Ahsoka in,
Yes.
she has a pair of curved lightsabers with different frames than what Asajj Ventress had,
Mm-hmm.
but they're both curved and they're both silver. And I think that if we don't have any other standing theories about what the silver lightsaber is and where it comes from, there's a really juicy theory to be supported here. About her being like, cool, Asajj's old lightsabers. Let me just remake these. Done.
Yeah.
Deal. Boom.
There is some explanation though, unfortunately, because between seasons 5 and 7, she kind of gives up being a Jedi. Like, she continually tells other people that she used to be a Jedi. She is no longer a Jedi.
Right.
And even when Order 66 happened, she's like, I am not a Jedi. And they try to loophole that, but unfortunately the clones already know her as a Jedi, so they try to, enact Order 66 on her. And I think even in Mandalorian, I think at one point, like the Mandalorian was like, I need to give the child to a Jedi, and she goes, I am no Jedi.
Right, right.
which I don't want to get into because like this is definitely the like topic of another episode. But like I
Oh yeah.
love the duality of Ahsoka going, "I am no Jedi," and Rey going, "I am all the Jedi." I want to get into that, but after all of this, and I think it's a very interesting theory. I love hearing that because the more I hear about it, the more I think like, oh, this could be a thing. Like I that could be a source of interest. Like the fucking like how things connect are amazing if that were to be true, or at least
Oh
that
yeah.
would be the fan theory.
For sure.
But even though there's only so much until the Ahsoka miniseries comes out, can't really talk about too much about what the white lightsabers
Right.
mean.
Right. It's just
However,
huh,
there is
huh.
one lightsaber, and there's one primary color left that we have yet to talk about that has been fully kind of talked about and extended upon, which is the lightsaber black.
Yeah.
Specifically, we are talking about the dark saber. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is purely just extended theory or extended canon, which has been adapted into some modern iterations of what the canon is. The dark saber is the only lightsaber ever to be constructed by the only Mandalorian Jedi to ever exist, which is Terra Vizsla. They after I think this was after the Mandalorian Wars or the Mandalores, they became part of the Jedi Order to try to kind of bridge, the coalescence, the coalition, the friendliness between Mandalore and basically the rest of the universe, and they had constructed a very prototype-ish lightsaber, which ended up being of the black color. After Tara Vizsla's death, the Jedi took control of the lightsaber, and because it was so unique, they hid it in their vault until a couple of generations later, the House Vizsla, the Mandalorians, thought that it was their rightful heirloom. They invaded the Jedi Order. They apprehended the dark saber, and then ever since then, the dark saber became a symbol of Mandalorian hope and leadership. So that whoever wielded it was maybe not the rightful heir to the Mandalorians, but they were the leader the Mandalorians needed them to be in that time of like societal conflict. And you see that with I can't think of her name. God damn, Sabine Wren in Star Wars Rebels, where the Mandalorians are still in kind of a civil war. There's like 7 or 8 different clans that they're all trying to kill each other with. One has aligned themselves with the Empire, and so they're kind of stronger, and they kind of betray the Mandalorian ways by succumbing to this regime that wasn't Mandalorian. And when she kind of comes in hold of it, she's trained by Kanan Jarrus to wield it like an actual lightsaber, even though she is not force sensitive. And she
Right.
eventually kind of unites the Mandalorians against the Empire. She actually gives it up, and it becomes her mother's, I think, who is a little more Mandalorian, like in the old ways than Sabine Wren is. Where Sabine Wren's more like we're all of the same, and her mother is more like Mandalorians are superior. It disappears for about 20 years, and then comes back in The Mandalorian, the series, when Moff Gideon has it because he bested whoever had it previously. And for her Mandalorian tradition, whoever has the dark saber and is bested, the dark saber becomes the rightful property of whoever bested them. And then we see Bo Katan try to get that back, but unfortunately, Jin Djarin bests Moff Gideon, and so now he is the rightful heir. And so it leaves a lot to interpretation for Mandalorian season 3, which I'm very, very excited about.
I know. I'm so. Oh my god. I can't
Absolutely,
even.
dude. Fucking the last like 2 episodes, or the last like 3 episodes of the Mandalorian season 2, leave so much to be open to. You see fucking
Yeah.
Ahsoka Tano. You know that
Yeah.
she's going after Thrawn, and if you didn't know, I think I've talked to you about it, but the end of Star Wars Rebels is that there's this Jedi apprentice Ezra Bridger who's the apprentice the entire time to Kanan Jarrus. Kanan Jarrus unfortunately passes away in episode 4, or not episode 4, season 4, basically leaving Ezra Bridger to be the only kind of Jedi that we know about at the time. Of course, there's Luke Skywalker and Leia, outside of this. There's this prominent Admiral Thrawn who's sought to quell the resurgency, the insurgency, the rebellion. And unfortunately, he fails and he loses to Ezra Bridger, and they both kind of, hyperdrive, teleport away from this final battle, and they never heard from again. But when we saw Ahsoka Tano, she goes to this Imperial kind of dictator, remnant, and goes, where is your owner, where is your master, Thrawn? Which proves that Thrawn not only survived, but also Ezra Bridger survived. So, and that's like a fucking 20-year time skip that we haven't seen. So I'm really excited to see what Ezra Bridger has kind of become what has become of Thrawn, and what has happened in that time. So hopefully Ahsoka, miniseries explains those and kind of answers those questions. But then fucking Luke Skywalker appears. He takes the child. There's Bo-Katan. There's the dark side. There is so much fucking happening.
Mandalorian has a lot of promise for the extended universe.
Yes.
The dark saber, I'm gonna be that guy. Are you ready?
Okay. What?
I thought in season 1 when the dark saber showed up that it was really cool that it showed up, but I was worried that they were gonna call it a type of lightsaber, because back when I used to play KOTOR, vibroblades were this alternative, comparable but not quite as good version of these melee weapons that could be used the same way as a lightsaber. And I really was genuinely hoping that because of the unique shape of it being a one-sided blade, that the dark saber was going to be a piece of souped up vibroblade technology, because I thought it was going to be really cool if they openly acknowledged a bunch of old stuff. Now they didn't do a bad thing. They're still bringing a little bit of this extended universe lore into modern canon, right? But I saw it. I was worried they were going to do it because the second I saw the visuals, I was like, nobody's going to know what a vibroblade is. They're going to want to make it something cool and unique that the audience is going to be able to understand easily. So let's make it this thing. And so they made it the dark saber. And I really like the history behind the dark saber. And I really like the implications of the dark saber.
Oh yeah.
But I'm not 100% all in on what the dark saber is. Obviously, you know more about it than I do. My initial research into it, right? I see it and I'm like, cool. If everybody has all these different types of lightsaber, and most of them end up being developed out of this force attuned material, right? Or these artificial materials that impart the colors. The darksaber is the first, energy saber-esque weapon that I've seen in lore, extended or otherwise, to not only take on the dark coloration, but also to take on a unique shape.
Yes.
Right? I don't get where Mandalorians, as a race of beings who are known to have no attunement to the Force, right, can get an analog to a lightsaber that operates this way without it being fully artificial. And if that's the case, then how something so fully artificial can be honed to have such a distinct silhouette? Because the lightsabers themselves, they're just emissions of a specific kind of energy, right? The darksaber very clearly looks like it's an actual object. It's solid and it has definition and it has a specific contour to one side and to another side of it. And we get a lot of really good images, like in The Mandalorian when Mando's fighting Moff Gideon. And you see the saber, and you see Mando holding the darksaber, right? There's a lot of great shots of it, where you see how unique it is. I want to know, right? So this starts touching parts of the universe that I have not touched, right? How this thing was made, who is this person and how it was made, because it has to fit in some way into the categories we've already established about it being um, a force attuned kyber crystal or a unique like artificial material or something, right? Like, or is it like this own separate thing? Like, how did the Mandalorians do this?
Okay, so I think answering your questions, I don't know how much canonically it is, but I've got like my own opinions based on what I know of, and again, that's probably only like half the story. So I believe all of this happened. So you need to take into consideration that Tarviz is the only Mandalorian to ever be accepted into the Jedi Order. Maybe they're the only Mandalorians to be ever, force sensitive, or just, there are other force sensitive Mandalorians, but the only one to be accepted. Otherwise, either way, this is a very important character, a very
Sure.
generation defining character for the Mandalorian specifically. And I believe
Right.
this is after the Mandalorian Wars, where the Mandalorians are kind of beaten and broken. They lost this war. They are just like these scattered clans that are trying to fight for, survival against each other, let alone like they full on lost a war against like the other galactic and, force sensitive systems. And it's kind of like almost like if you want to compare it to Germany after World War I, like they're just fighting for survival after being beaten down by numerous powers. And it's really sad to see. But when you think about this, like this is very very old school, old republic, uh, uh you know, lightsaber Jedi, however you want. Like this is very old school. And you think about it, this is like the predecessor to vibro blades. Like it's my own opinion that the vibro blades were basically meant to try to be lightsabers, but weren't quite there because they weren't force sensitive. And the only right, and that's why like it's a Mandalorian who's ready for war, who's only known war their entire life, whose culture literally just revolves around war. That's why their blade looks so differently. They're just like this pioneer into this culmination of the Force sensitive and the Mandalorians who only knows war, that makes this weapon that isn't like you think of a lightsaber. Really, the origin of a lightsaber is for self defense. This is not for self defense. This is for attack, and it really really correlates and comes to a head when you think of a Force sensitive Mandalorian. I think that's why it looks the way it does, and I think why Fiber Blades look the way they do is because they're trying to mimic and they're trying to copy the dark saber, but they can't quite get it there because they're not force sensitive. They can't have force sensitive, materials like the kyber crystals or even anything synthetic to a kyber crystal because they can't understand it because they are not force sensitive. I think that kind of answers all of your questions, maybe in a hand wavy way, but I think that still kind of like touches on the points that you were talking about.
Well, sure. Right.
And at that
I
point,
think that was an option.
yeah, and at that point, it becomes an heirloom for Mandalorians, where there hasn't been another Force sensitive Mandalorian, at least not one that's been, prominent like Tara Vizsla, sorry, and that's just kind of where it falls under this like. And this is what I meant to say at the very beginning, but like I think it's edgy for edgy's sake. You think of, unfortunately, I'm about to alienate a lot of anyone who's listening. Darth Revan is edgy for edgy's sake. Reading more about his history, I kind of like him, but like I still think to the core he is edge for edge's sake, and that's what the dark saber I think is. The
Sure.
dark saber is cool for cool sake. It's edgy for edgy's sake. It's one of a kind. It's unique. It's dark without being dark side of the force, and I think it's
Right.
just a weird. We want to appease the fan base without giving them real reason to, and the fan base is like, we accept this.
Right.
So
You
I
know,
think that's where
that's
we
fair.
fall under, but I think there are logistic and logical and reasonable explanations of what this is, why it looks the way it does, what came after it as well.
You know, um, I think that is a. I mean, it reaffirms the point we've been making, kind of interspersed, and at the very beginning of this whole conversation, about how heavily production influences
Mm-hmm.
um, the world, right? Like the world of Star Wars, and specifically that like what is implied by this very innocuous but very like integral component of what of like the Star Wars universe being the lightsaber. It's like the chosen weapon of Jedi and Sith. Um, I think this idea of the lightsaber, like this answer to the lightsaber, right? So like where the Sith's answer to the lightsabers that they themselves could not possess, that the Jedi had, was synthetic, and was in its own right like contorted and manipulated. The
Mm-hmm.
Mandalorians, being a race of beings known for their like passion and drive to succeed in military conquest, developing their own piece of tech like this, yeah, that's definitely up their alley. Um, I I risk my reputation as a Star Wars fan by mentioning that ever so long ago, long before the Jedi and the Sith were even a thing, and before lightsabers were even like a thing, the original versions of the lightsabers were like they weren't elegant. They were like big backpacks with tubes,
Yeah.
and they much less refined. Um, I would be interested in having in like understanding how far apart the development of the dark saber was from that phase in technological evolution, the technological evolution of the saber technology, because like clearly there's a lot that goes into these different forms of sabers, and the idea of the dark crystal not really being this thing of the force, but being this thing of like edginess for edgy's sake, of like visual distinction from the good guys and bad guys, this like unique tool for a specific set of people in the universe, kind of plugs into this like this whole extended idea, which I am not as equipped to talk about, of like the saber technology and the universe's attempts to adapt to what the Jedi and Sith did to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because like they weren't the only players. There are bounty hunters. Even in Mandalorian, you see scenes where normal folks are using vibroblade technology in like knife fights, like in season 2, in the beginning of season 2, when there's the knife fight at the very beginning in the bar. Um, they're both using vibroblades, right? And like to see these like little hints at this technology that existed, maybe in response to, maybe as like a parallel evolution for like the needs of that the lightsaber just happened to be the most successful form of. Um, you clearly see that like something's there. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and we've seen how the force sensitive people do it, and then seeing the dark saber and being like, here's like the best example of how the non-force sensitive do it, is
Mm-hmm.
like that's its own separate thing. And um, I think that to me is a good opportunity to like suggest we make a note of how, like a note to talk about how the universe reacted to these people, the Sith and the Jedi. Because I think that we've expressed here, just in the development of the lightsabers, that there's a lot to be assumed about who is good and who is bad that ends up becoming immediately subverted, and even shown to be subverted through the lightsabers themselves as tools that the Sith use, as tools that different kinds of Jedi use with different motivations and backstories, different like histories, as tools that people that aren't Jedi use, right? And even then, I think that same conversation can talk a little bit more about the colors of lightsaber that we haven't talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like how in The Force Awakens, the game that's come out recently, the main character uses his master's Jedi, or not Jedi, oops, his master's lightsaber, which is like an orange lightsaber, different from a yellow, and how in extended canon there are also variants of others, right? So there are like cyan
Oh,
and
there's oh god, I looked
like
it up.
like lightsabers with different cores.
I looked up the full list and I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
this is fucking insane. I'm just gonna stick to color, like the base colors, and even then we
right.
still hit like 7 or 8 different colors. Like it, there's extended universe is one thing. When it gets too obscure, you just gotta be like, this is cool, but I'm not gonna talk about it.
Right.
This is not
And
part of the
that's kind
conversation.
of what I mean. Like were we to get into the extended universes, like the universe's reaction
Like
to
magenta
Jedi and
and
the Sith?
orange and other like cyan, like yeah, I'm looking at it, magenta, orange, and bronze because like Chewbacca's nephew was a disciple of Luke Skywalker and had a bronze. I can't. There's just too much. I'm sorry. There's too much to read. There's too much to talk about. I just can't. You gotta. You.
The
There's a line somewhere.
the point, right? So like the point that I'm trying to get at, like
Mm-hmm.
tying that together, is that like as the universe has reacted to Jedi and Sith. Um, and as we see that there is nuance to and like small one-off examples of where lightsaber tech and non-lightsaber tech has evolved in the universe, like that itself is its own separate conversation to be had outside of this conversation because of how it gets in like it's all one subject. It's not just like lightsabers part 2, it's like the minutia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Miscellaneous, because the vibroblade technology comes in different flavors, it comes from different histories and backstories. That's like largely expounded upon, I think, from like, or maybe not expounded upon. Sorry, largely represented in non-canon media, and then you see other things that are kind of along the same lines about the development of technology, like energy shield technology and like personal energy shield technology, right? That you also see in like certain examples around different parts of the universe. I think that it would be more interesting to talk about the other colors of lightsabers that are like lesser, like aren't mainstream, and like the other technologies as a way of saying, cool, well, here's the other types of technology that show up that we see common or commonly used that are like because of the power that is already established that Jedi and Sith have, right? And like because of the power that is like commonly established as like the regular bar for what everybody else has access to in the universe. Because you know, there's plenty to talk about
God.
in terms of like what weapons exist in the Star Wars universe that aren't lightsabers and whatever, but I think that the historical context, the environment that everything is built off of, on like that everything is built on top of, is usually a better way to start talking about those things. Like, why does somebody have a bronze lightsaber? Probably a production choice because they were like, this looks cool. But why why would you put a mobile shield generator on a droideka? And why didn't two Jedi who have the ability to use the Force just slice through the shield? And the
Okay, well,
questions that starts asking, right? Talk about another
yeah.
episode, not asking that for literally right now. I'm
No,
saying
let's
that as
get
a
into
later
it now.
conversation. In a later conversation, as an example, there is tech that has evolved that like lightsabers fit into. They're like a piece of a much larger puzzle. And the universe had to react to lightsabers, you know? There's tech out there that uh, I think is really interesting to talk about outside of the context of like the Jedi and the Sith.
Okay, like you. Okay, I agree with all that. I think we've kind of talked enough about this episode, but I do kind of want to wrap up
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah, for
that.
sure.
Is that um, I lost it. So we talk about like how the lightsaber is closely related with force sensitive people, and of course how technology has revolved and evolved and just come to combat lightsabers as a whole. Again, as you referenced Droideka, and as the most recent season of Mandalorian proves that Beskar metal, maybe not even armor, but like metal, can combat lightsabers and not get cut through.
Right.
Kind of defies what we know as lightsabers that can cut through anything at some point or another. You think of Qui-Gon Jinn kind of stabbing through Newt Gunray's like blast shield doors. Like, even though it wasn't instantaneous, it still was able to do it at some point. But it kind of makes an interesting point where you talk about how other force sensitive people have kind of made technology to combat that. But I want to finish up with the point that like lightsabers were meant for people who were force sensitive, and the only reason why, and it's been expanded upon a multiple time iterations, why lightsabers exist for force sensitive people and why other people can't wield it as strongly or as nicely as someone who is force sensitive. You look at Finn, and that's kind of like a little bit of an example because you learn later on he is kind of force sensitive. But like, people with the force have to be mindful of their surroundings of every second of every day, especially when they're wielding lightsabers, because one wrong move cuts off a finger, cuts off a limb,
Right.
cuts you in half. So you have to be sensitive of it at all times, not only of your opponents but of yourself. And that ties into how some Jedi, maybe all, maybe not all, kind of have some precognition of understanding where lightsabers are going to come from and know how to defend against it. Because you see that obviously with blasters. You know, they have to defend against blasters. They have to know when blasters are going to come and at what direction, at what speed. But when it comes to lightsabers, it's just a whole different, you know,
Right.
conversation.
Look, I'm saying, as part of this idea of this like extended technology that lightsabers kind of set a precedent for in the Star Wars universe, um, I don't see why we haven't seen lightsaber tipped missiles.
Listen, you, hold on.
And just look, man, like that thing's got a battery on it that doesn't seem to run out ever. You just put it, and why not? Why didn't they? Oh, whatever.
I
Anyway,
don't know.
um,
Like, you think, hold on, you think after Order 66 with Emperor Palpatine, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of lightsabers that exist? Where did they go? You know, Plo Koon's lightsaber,
right,
Eve Koth's
right.
lightsaber, Mace Windu's lightsaber, that fell out a window. But, like, there are so many lightsabers of Masters and of Padawans at the Jedi Temple. Where did they all go? What happened to them? Like,
Good
I
question.
know specifically the Emperor outlawed uh, the creation of lightsabers and of the use of kyber crystals for good reason, but also, like, what did he do with the others in the meantime?
You know, you think you. I don't think a Sith would destroy a lightsaber. Is all I'm saying.
True. You also don't see the Emperor use the lightsaber at all. After he transitions from Sidious to the Emperor, he never
Yeah.
uses the lightsaber. It's kind of
Yeah.
quite interesting. But, alright. We've hit on all the points. I know we were going to talk about Darth Revan a little bit, but that kind of becomes a whole hour conversation by
Oh
itself.
yeah.
So I
Oh,
think we're at.
he's a big deal.
Yeah, and this is. God, I want Knights of the Old Republic to be just remade, remastered so badly. I never played one, but I played two, and I love it, and I know what the premise of one is, and I want to experience it in its entirety.
All I'm gonna say is that
But
one is regularly on sale in various marketplaces, and also that two is also on sale in various
okay,
marketplaces.
actually, I never beat two. I got to the final boss fight, and I just never
Oh, I did.
like
I played.
I didn't like lose to it. I just got to the final boss. I'm like, all right, I'll pick this up later, and I never picked it up again. But like, but it's aged, so I just want it to be remastered to better reflect, 2021 combat that I know
Sure.
exists. It's so dated. Oh my god. All right,
I know.
it's gonna happen either 10 years from now or 20 years from now. It's gonna happen at some point. I don't have any doubt on that. As soon as Lucasfilm and Disney stop giving EA the license for Star Wars games. But anywho, um, I hope you enjoyed episode one. This was a little more factual. We did talk about our opinions and we were able to kind of dive into the lore and the extended lore, but this was a little more of a factual kind of oriented episode. I hope in the coming episodes we're able to kind of get a little less factual and a little more open to interpretation because we will argue for fucking hours with each other.
Oh, absolutely. And that's
Absolutely.
what we're here for. Just a structured way of having an argument about how things that a bunch of people probably didn't think of when they were writing something for a living and did a great job at. Thank you all for creating this beautiful universe if you're listening. Uh, maybe didn't get answered. But
Listen,
anyway, dude, thank you.
people have arguments in the moment. You and I schedule our arguments out days in advance.
y-
That's what this
It's
podcast is.
it's just responsible. It's just being responsible. It's
Absolutely.
just being a responsible adult. That's all this
We
is.
are mature, we're responsible. We don't just have arguments for the sake of arguments. We plot them out. We write
Mature.
up the talking points.
Well, if we're wrapping up,
We are wrapping up.
then I suppose it's time to bid our farewells.
Yes. I am Day. This is Ian. We never said our names at the beginning of the podcast, but here we
We can put,
are.
we can fix it in post.
Fix it in post.
Fix it in post.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as we did because we're just gonna continue this whether or not we get views because this was fun and I look forward to the next podcast. We got to figure out what the topic is.
We'll figure out a
Something.
topic. We'll figure out a time.
something much more controversial than lightsaber colors.
Oh, yes, good controversy. Huh?
All right. We will see you guys in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. Hope you enjoyed listening, and we will see you later. As a side note, Ian, because I talked about this at the very beginning, or I guess pre-recording, but because you have aligned yourself with the Jedi and I have aligned myself with the Sith, I really just want the podcast to be named A Jedi and a Sith Talk. It is the Jedi and the Sith podcast. We just talk.
A Jedi and a Sith talk.
Simple as that.
There's got to be something. There's something along those lines. I'm sure that we can hit it. Like there's snappy, quick, like witty, like 60 seconds. Like a good solid a title for a talk show that has to do with like the Tonight Show, but it's like something about the something thematically wrapped in the Jedi and the Sith. Just having a sit down, like.
Yeah, we put aside our differences. We're not killing each other. We just talk.
Yeah, let's just talk about the Force, bud.
Let's just talk.
Let's talk about the Force.
All right. I think that is an apt description of what this podcast series is going to be about, especially because of our differing views, but also how we, are in line with certain views. But we'll workshop it. We've got a basis. We'll workshop it.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But
all right, dude.
All right. It was a pleasure talking with you and talking about this. We're gonna get into it. We've got so many ideas of what episode 2 is gonna be about, and it's just gonna be so much more like controversial and just a lot more yelling, a lot less factual, a lot less like this is according to this book. It's gonna be like, well, fuck you, I'm right, and this is why.
Yeah.
All right.
Stay tuned for the juicy spouts.
Yes, I hope you all enjoyed. See you for episode 2. Good night.
So long.